Coming up on today's show, what's the latest on Troy Hill, Jalen Smith, and Ronnie Harrison? I'm here to tell you that there is still a chance that the Raiders sign all three of those players, but what exactly needs to happen? The Raiders worked out 4 players on Monday, and they worked out 3 running backs today. I'll tell you all of those names. And then I got a trade idea that I wish McDaniels and Ziegler would see right now because I really think that they should offer it to a certain team. So the Raiders signings are maybe going to be coming here. The Las Vegas Raiders, they've worked out a lot of players in these recent days. However, there's been 3 names that I'll continuously get asked about. Troy Hill, Jalen Smith, Ronnie Harrison, safety, linebacker, and cornerback. But depending on how the defense looks this upcoming game against the San Francisco 49ers could determine whether or not certain players get signed. Essentially, I was told by a source that the Raiders are going to be scouting the cornerback spot, the linebacker spot, the safety spot, and I'll get into which players they are exactly. And if they play well, you're probably not going to get signings. If they don't play well, that's where some of these players might end up getting signed. So let's first talk about Troy Hill here, who I'm just noticing this tattoo. This is a wild-looking tattoo here. And Troy Hill came in on a visit on July 24th. That was actually the same day him and Marcus Peters came in, and they're pretty good friends. Las Vegas likes his versatility. They like his ability that he can play inside corner, and he can also play outside, so that versatility is going to go a very long way. If the Raiders' defensive backs, if they struggle against San Francisco, then that's going to be a little bit more reason why they could go out and sign Hill. I'll admit, out of the 3 players that I mentioned here, Hill's probably the least likely that the Raiders would end up signing, but just keep it expected. If Facyson is also out longer than expected, so the Raiders don't expect him to be out too long, but they know that he's going to miss some time. If they get some extra information that says, hey, man, he's going to be out even longer, that's another reason why they could go out and try to get Hill. So the top players that I'm watching against the San Francisco 49ers that could directly impact Troy Hill, it's David Long Jr., Sam Webb, Amik Robertson, and Tyler Hall. These 4 players are the guys that really could determine whether or not a guy like Hill ends up signing with this team. The reason why Jacorian Bennett, Marcus Peters, Nate Hobbs, they don't really have an implication here because they're up here, where then that's a tier break, and now there's that next level of cornerbacks. When you don't have a guy like Facyson, a player that this team was relying on to bring some of that toughness and veteran leadership, that's something that's definitely going to impact this Raiders defense. So these are the players to watch for Troy Hill. Coming up next here on the Raiders Report, we got updates on Jalen Smith and also Ronnie Harrison. But a friendly reminder that we are going to be live on Sunday, Raiders 49ers watch party here on the Raiders Report, and we're going to get started an hour before kickoff. So set that reminder on your phone and make sure those notifications are turned on, because as soon as we go live, we're getting the party started. We also have a battle with our 49ers channel here at Chat Sports of who can get the most subscribers starting on Monday, so yesterday, running all the way up to Sunday game time. If these 2 teams are going to battle on the field, guess what? I'm going to battle here on YouTube. So we're going to do a Super Chat battle on Sunday, and I want to show our 49ers channel who really still owns the Bay. So hit that subscribe button and join us for a absolutely wild competition on Sunday. Let's now talk about Ronnie Harrison. He came in for a visit on August 2nd with the Silver and Black, and Patrick Graham believes that he has a role for him, and what do I mean by that exactly? If you go back and watch my show I did on Harrison, it's essentially they look for versatility, right? They look for I'm going to use this comp, Jabril Peppers mold, where it's a guy who can play in the box, somebody who's not as great at covering, good tackler, gives you some of that toughness, but can play a few different roles. And the name that I continue to throw out there, and I literally thought of it when I was doing the show on Harrison, was he's Carl Joseph. Like, if you don't know a lot about Ronnie Harrison, he's basically Carl Joseph. He would add more competition to camp. He could be a good special teams player, and the fact that he could add competition, I'm not saying he would make the 53-man roster, but if you can add competition right now to this part of the offseason, that's what McDaniels and Ziegler are definitely looking for, and then also Patrick Graham. So the players that I'm watching very closely that could impact Harrison are the safeties, right? It's not going to be Marcus Epps. It's not going to be Trevon Merrick. These are the 2 names. These are the 2 names that weigh the most heavily with Harrison. Yeah, Roger Teamer and Jaquan Johnson, they might have a little bit of impact. Johnson, by far the least amount compared to these 3 players. But Teamer, special teams guy, strong safety. It comes down to these 2 names. If these 2 players play well, I do not think that Ronnie Harrison will ever be repping that silver and black. Let's go to the final name here, Jalen Smith. He also worked out on August 2nd, and he's also played in Patrick Graham's defense before, back with the New York Giants in 2021. He's a good run stopper, but I'll be honest with y'all, he just doesn't move very well sideline to sideline anymore since sustaining that knee injury. Does he offer good competition? Yes. Does he offer a good run stopper? Yes. Does he offer you a veteran leader who also knows the Patrick Graham defense that can potentially help out some of these younger linebackers? The answer to all those questions is yes, but he can't cover, so I will always get a little bit nervous. In terms of who am I watching, you should watch the entire linebacker group. Like, Divine Diablo, Robert Spillane are the top 2 LBs, and that's probably going to be the top 2 linebackers that get the most playing time this upcoming season. But after that, Luke Masterson, UDFA. Amari Burney, they drafted him. He's going to have to prove himself. I can't wait to see Drake Thomas, Darian Butler, Curtis Bolton apparently has been looking better on top of that. Every single Raiders linebacker could have an impact on whether or not they sign Jalen Smith. So we just went through, we talked about Troy Hill, we talked about Smith, and we talked about Ronnie Harrison. Here's going to be the number one question that I want every single person to answer when they watch this video. If you could pick only one player to sign, who would you pick? Troy Hill, Jalen Smith, Ronnie Harrison? My answer after this YouTube ad break. If I had to rank them, this would be the way that I would rank them. I would put Jalen Smith at number 1, and it's not because I think Smith's by far the best player on this list, because him and Troy Hill might actually be the better player, but in terms of what we need more, we need a linebacker more than we need a corner. Also, on top of that, I'll take a veteran leader that's already played in Patrick Graham's defense that can bring some of that swagger, and Jalen Smith will be able to do that. So I would have Jalen Smith at number 1, Troy Hill at number 2, Ronnie Harrison at number 3. Coming up next here on the show, the Raiders, man, they've been working out a bunch, and I mean a bunch of players. 3 running backs today, 4 players yesterday. I'll tell you who those players are and what I think about them. But first, man, we're bringing back an OG sponsor here. And if you're looking for the number 1 sports book out there, if you're like Mitch, I like to bet on Raiders games. Mitch, I like to bet on NFL games. Mitch, I want to bet on the AFC West. Man, I got the hell of best freaking deal on the internet right now. If you go to chatsports.com/Raiders and then you use promo code Raiders125, you're going to get a 125% deposit bonus. Mitch, what does that mean? It means if you put down $100 and it's your first time deposit, you get $125 for free to bet with. So $100, you're basically getting $225 to bet with. If you ask me, that's a hell of a deal. Now, the last time I checked the AFC West odds, and I get it, Raiders are down there, plus 1,400. But guess what? If you risk $10 on the Raiders to win the AFC West, you win $140. I see people, the amount of $100 super chats we get on this show, put down $100 for a chance to win $1,400. I know it's far-fetched, but you know what? Crazy shit happens all the freaking time in the NFL. And over the past 2 seasons, the Raiders have been picked to finish last. And yet, they haven't finished last. So go put your money where your mouth is at chatsports.com/Raiders. Promo code is Raiders125. All right, let's now go to the next thing. Coming up here on today's show, more player workouts here. And the Raiders worked out 4 names, and I laugh a little bit because some of the names that the Raiders have been bringing in on workouts, I like to play a game of, is that a real person or not? We talked a little bit about Okudah Allen yesterday on the show. He's a tight end. He did play a little bit of quarterback in college, but he offers you some versatility. And from all the names that you're about to see, this is the guy that they're the most interested in from what I'm told. I'm not going to act like I know who Nakia Griffin-Stewart is. He's played in 2 games before, came from Pittsburgh, and they worked out some tight ends. They worked out some defensive backs, so you got another tight end right here. Vernon Scott, 14 tackles, 2 tackles for loss. I actually did hear some good things about him from past people that I've talked to. He went to college at TCU. And then, this is another top name, Armani Watts, 58 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 2 PBUs throughout his career. Did play for the Kansas City Chiefs, so that's who the Raiders worked out yesterday. The Raiders, they worked out 3 running backs today, and I laughed because I'm like, Isaiah Bowser, Stevie Scott, and Antonio Williams. When I talked about this when I was live earlier on today's show, people were like, oh, what does that mean for Jacobs? This has absolutely positively nothing to do with Jacobs, and it only means that they're trying to get their running backs ready for the first preseason game. Remember, The Raiders do not have Austin Walter. He is done for the season. And there's also some stories and rumors out there that Britton Brown is currently battling some injury. So that means it's only Brandon Bolden, Amir Abdullah, Zamir White, and then Sincere McCormick. They want to work with some more running backs. That way there's no more injuries to that unit. So if the Raiders do end up signing one of these backs, it's literally just to get them through that first preseason game. The final thing that we're going to talk about here is a trade that I think that the Raiders should make. And I'm a big person where I like deals, right? I like deals where if I see a yard sale, I'll stop by. Why? I might be able to find something cheap. And I think the Raiders would be really smart here to go pick up the phone, call the Atlanta Falcons, and say, hey, I see you guys lost Jeff Okudah, not for the entire season. Also, Clark Phillips III, he was carted off the field on practice on Tuesday. We still don't have the severity of that injury. But Jeff Okudah and Clark Phillips, that's two corners. One plays on the outside, one played on the inside. I would call Atlanta and say, hey, are you guys interested in a corner? And the reason why I do that is because if this team plans on only keeping 6 corners, that means a guy like, I don't know, a David Long Jr. and Amik Robertson, somebody that probably could make a 53-man roster, doesn't end up making it. So here's the deal that I'm going to do. I'm going to offer you Amik Robertson for a 7th-round pick. It kind of sucks taking that deal because I know Amik's been practicing well. I know he's been working with the ones in training camp. But the reason why I'm not going to buy it is because Lester Cotton worked with the ones the entire offseason, didn't make the 53-man. So what if they're trying to do the exact same thing here with Robertson? On top of that, Atlanta has been a team that has negotiated with the Raiders in the past and hasn't been afraid to take a chance on a 2020 draft pick. Last season, or 2 seasons ago, whatever it is, the Raiders traded Brian Edwards to who? The Atlanta Falcons. So here's the idea that I would cook up, but I would only do it if the Raiders know deep down that they're not going to keep Amik Robertson. You make this trade, and maybe you can keep a Sam Webb guy instead. All I'm trying to do is, instead of just cutting a player, trading them away, getting an extra draft pick. That way you can make an extra move following season. So here's my trade idea. Would you make this move? The Raiders, they get a 7th-round pick in 2024. The Atlanta Falcons get Amik Robertson at cornerback. Now, that's all the time I got for you guys today. We appreciate every single crazy one of y'all. Especially, shout out to Venthrak, because Venthrak went absolutely balls to the wall today. And if you see Venthrak down in the comments of any of our shows this week, make sure you salute that man for being a wild one. If you have any other questions or comments, I'll do my best also to keep you guys up to date on all my social media, Twitter, X, whatever the hell it's called now, and then also on Instagram at Mitchell Renz 365. The next time I'll be live is on Thursday, Raiders-Broncos Madden Week 18 simulation. If the Raiders win, there's a chance that they're in. However, the Chargers have to lose to the Kansas City Chiefs in order for that to happen. We'll see what ends up going down, but hopefully you join us live for Thursday. And don't worry, we're going to get wild on that day. So hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications.